In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers touched the clouds and streets buzzed with endless activity, lived a man named Robert Carter. He was not just any man, he was one of the richest people in the city. His wealth came from years of smart investments, hard work, and a little bit of luck. Robert owned luxurious properties, expensive cars, and had access to everything money could buy. Yet, despite all this, he often found himself staring out of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, feeling empty inside. Robert's days were filled with meetings, phone calls, and decisions that affected thousands of people. But at night, when the noise of the city faded into the distance, he couldn't shake off a strange sense of dissatisfaction. Something was missing, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. It wasn't loneliness. He had friends and family who admired him. It wasn't boredom. He always had something to do. It was something deeper, something he couldn't name. One evening, as he sat in his living room scrolling through social media on his phone, a video caught his attention. It showed a woman sitting on a park bench, handing over half of her sandwich to another person who looked even more tired and hungry than she did. The caption read, "Lisa Monroe, a homeless woman, shares her only meal with strangers every day." Intrigued, Robert clicked play. The video was short but powerful. Lisa spoke softly, her voice calm and kind. She explained how she ended up on the streets after losing her job and being evicted from her apartment 2 years ago. Despite her struggles, she said she believed in helping others because everyone deserved a little kindness. Her words struck a chord with Robert. Here was someone who had nothing yet gave freely without expecting anything in return. How was that possible? Was her generosity real, or was there some hidden motive behind it? Robert paused the video, his mind racing. He had always thought that people acted out of self-interest. Even his own charitable donations were partly motivated by tax benefits and public image. But Lisa seemed different. Or was she? What if her actions were staged for attention? What if she was using her situation to manipulate others? These questions gnawed at him until he decided to find out for himself. The idea came to him late that night as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. If he wanted to test Lisa's character, he would have to get close to her. And the best way to do that was to become someone she wouldn't suspect, a fellow homeless person. The thought excited him. For years, he had been insulated by his wealth and privilege. This would be an adventure, a chance to see the world from a completely different perspective. The next morning, Robert called his trusted assistant, Karen, and asked her to help him prepare for his transformation. "I need you to get me old clothes, the dirtier the better," he instructed, "and make sure no one knows about this, not even security." Karen raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. She knew better than to pry into Robert's personal affairs. By noon, Robert stood in front of a full-length mirror in his bedroom, barely recognizing himself. Gone was the polished businessman in tailored suits. In his place was a scruffy-looking man with unkempt hair, a scruffy beard, and clothes that smelled like they hadn't been washed in weeks. Karen had done a good job. To complete the look, she smeared dirt on his face and hands, making him appear weathered and worn. "You look convincing," Karen said hesitantly, trying not to laugh. "Perfect," Robert replied, adjusting his torn jacket. "Now let's hope I can pull this off." With that, he stepped out of his penthouse and into the elevator, heading straight for the ground floor. As the doors opened, he felt a pang of nervousness. This was the first time in decades that he was stepping into the real world without the safety net of his wealth. Would people treat him differently now? Would they ignore him or worse, mock him? He walked out of the building and onto the busy streets of Manhattan. The contrast between his usual life and this new reality hit him immediately. People hurried past him without a second glance, their eyes glued to their phones or focused on their destinations. No one stopped to acknowledge him. It was humbling and slightly unsettling. Robert made his way to Central Park, where Lisa reportedly spent most of her time. He chose a spot near a fountain and sat down, clutching a cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps." It felt awkward at first, sitting there exposed and vulnerable. But as minutes turned into hours, he began to observe the world around him, in a way he never had before. Children laughed as they chased pigeons, couples strolled hand in hand, and tourists snapped photos of the iconic skyline. Amidst all this beauty, however, there was also hardship. A young mother begged for spare change while holding her crying baby. An elderly man rummaged through a trash can searching for food. These scenes were invisible to most passers-by, but Robert saw them clearly now. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, a figure approached him. It was Lisa. She carried a small paper bag and wore a threadbare coat that looked several sizes too big for her petite frame. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy bun and her cheeks were flushed from the cold. Up close, she looked even thinner than she did in the video. "Hi there," she said gently, crouching beside him. "Are you okay?" Robert hesitated, unsure of what to say. He had rehearsed lines in his head, but none of them seemed right in the moment. Instead, he nodded slowly and muttered, "Just trying to get by." Lisa smiled, her eyes warm and inviting. "Here," she said, pulling out half of a sandwich from her bag. "It's not much, but it might help." For a moment, Robert was speechless. He hadn't expected her to offer him food so quickly, or at all. His initial instinct was to refuse, but then he remembered why he was here. Taking a deep breath, he accepted the sandwich and muttered a quiet, "Thank you." They sat together in silence for a while, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the trees. Finally, Lisa broke the silence. "What's your story?" she asked, her tone curious but not intrusive. Robert hesitated again. He had prepared a backstory, but delivering it convincingly was harder than he anticipated. "I lost my job," he began haltingly. "Things went downhill after that. My wife left me and I couldn't afford rent anymore. Been on the streets for a few months now." Lisa nodded sympathetically. "I'm sorry to hear that. Life can be tough sometimes, huh?" "You have no idea," Robert replied, surprising himself with how genuine he sounded. Maybe it was the setting, or maybe it was Lisa's non-judgmental presence, but he found himself opening up in ways he hadn't planned. Lisa shared bits of her own story too, talking about how she used to work as a waitress before her landlord kicked her out. She spoke matter-of-factly without bitterness or resentment. "You learn to adapt," she said with a shrug, "and you realize that kindness goes a long way, even when you don't have much." As the sky grew darker, Lisa stood up and offered Robert a small smile. "Take care of yourself, okay? And if you ever need anything, I'm usually around here." With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Robert watched her go, his mind swirling with thoughts. Her kindness had been unexpected and surprisingly moving. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite identify. Was it admiration? Guilt? Curiosity? Whatever it was, it stayed with him long after she was gone. That night, as Robert returned to his penthouse and washed off the dirt and grime, he couldn't stop thinking about Lisa. Her simple act of sharing, her sandwich had left a lasting impression on him. He realized that testing her character might not be as straightforward as he had imagined. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, Robert woke up with a strange mix of excitement and unease. He had spent most of the night replaying his encounter with Lisa in his mind. Her kindness had been so genuine, so unforced, that it left him questioning everything. He thought he knew about people. Was she truly as selfless as she appeared, or was there more to her story? Determined to find out, he decided to continue his disguise and spend more time around her. After another quick transformation with Karen's help, Robert headed back to Central Park. This time he arrived earlier, hoping to catch Lisa before the crowds filled the area. He chose a spot near the same fountain where they had met the previous evening, clutching his cardboard sign and trying to look as inconspicuous as possible. The cold morning air bit at his skin, and for the first time, he realized how harsh life on the streets could be. His expensive coat and heated penthouse felt like a distant memory. As the sun rose higher, people began trickling into the park. Joggers pounded the pavement, dog walkers strolled leisurely, and tourists snapped photos of squirrels and statues. Robert kept his head down, occasionally glancing up to see if Lisa was nearby. Finally, after what felt like hours, he spotted her walking toward him. She carried the same threadbare coat and a small paper bag, though today it looked even emptier than before. "Hey, Joe," she said, using the name Robert had given her the previous day. "How are you holding up?" Robert forced a weak smile. "Just surviving, I guess." Lisa nodded knowingly, as if she understood exactly what he meant. She sat down beside him and pulled out half of an apple from her bag. "I didn't have much for breakfast," she admitted, "but I figured we could share this." Once again, Robert was struck by her generosity. Despite having almost nothing, herself, she still thought of others. He hesitated for a moment, then accepted the apple slice she offered. "Thanks," he mumbled, feeling a pang of guilt for deceiving her. They ate in silence for a while, watching the world go by. Eventually, Lisa broke the quiet. "You know, Joe, it's okay to feel lost sometimes. Everyone goes through tough times, but you've got to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets." Her words caught Robert off guard. They were simple, yet profound, and they came from someone who had experienced hardship firsthand. For a man used to giving advice rather than receiving it, this was unfamiliar territory. "How do you stay so positive?" he asked, genuinely curious. Lisa shrugged. "I try to focus on the good things even when they're small. Like helping someone else, it makes me feel like I'm not completely useless, you know? And besides, there's always someone worse off than me." Robert nodded slowly, absorbing her perspective. It was a stark contrast to his own life, where success was measured in dollars and deals. Here was Lisa, finding meaning in the smallest acts of kindness while he struggled to find purpose despite all his wealth. Over the next few days, Robert made it a point to cross paths with Lisa regularly. Each time she greeted him warmly, sharing whatever little food or supplies she had managed to gather. Sometimes it was a piece of bread, other times a bottle of water. She never asked for anything in return, nor did she expect gratitude. Her actions felt natural, as if helping others was simply second nature to her. During one of their conversations, Lisa invited Robert as Joe to join her at a local shelter where she volunteered occasionally. "They serve free meals there," she explained. "It's warm inside and you can rest for a bit. Plus, it's a good way to meet people who might need help." Robert hesitated. Volunteering at a shelter wasn't part of his plan, but he couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. Reluctantly, he agreed, telling himself it would be another opportunity to observe Lisa in action. That evening, they walked together to the shelter, which was located in a modest building tucked away in a quieter part of the city. Inside, the atmosphere was welcoming yet busy. Volunteers bustled around, serving hot meals to a line of people waiting patiently. Lisa introduced Robert to a few of the staff members, explaining that he was new to the area and needed some support. "Why, don't you help hand out plates?" she suggested, handing him a pair of gloves. "It's not hard and it'll give you something to do." For the first time in years, Robert found himself doing manual labor. At first, he fumbled awkwardly, unsure of how to interact with the people coming through the line. Some thanked him politely, others barely acknowledged his presence. But as the hours passed, he started to relax. He noticed how Lisa moved effortlessly among the crowd, chatting with individuals and remembering their names. She seemed to have a knack for making everyone feel seen and valued, no matter their circumstances. One man in particular caught Robert's attention. He was older, with graying hair and a weathered face, and he shuffled slowly through the line, leaning heavily on a cane. When Lisa saw him, she immediately stepped forward to assist him. "Mr. Daniels, right?" she said, smiling. "Here, let me carry your tray for you." The man's face lit up with recognition. "Lisa, I haven't seen you in a while. How have you been?" "I'm hanging in there," she replied cheerfully. "Come on, let's find you a seat." Watching this exchange, Robert felt a lump form in his throat. There was no pretense in Lisa's behavior, just pure, heartfelt compassion. It was clear that she cared deeply about these people, treating them like friends rather than strangers. He wondered how many wealthy philanthropists he knew could say the same. After the meal service ended, Lisa and Robert stepped outside to cool off. The night air was crisp and the stars twinkled faintly above them. "So, what did you think?" Lisa asked, brushing crumbs off her hands. "It was eye-opening," Robert admitted. "I've never done anything like that before." Lisa chuckled, softly. "Well, maybe now you'll consider volunteering more often. Trust me, it feels good to give back." Robert didn't respond right away. Instead, he gazed at the shelter behind them, thinking about the lives it touched every day. For the first time, he saw the value in helping others, not because it looked good on paper, but because it made a real difference. And for the first time in years, he felt a sense of fulfillment that money couldn't buy. As they parted ways for the night, Robert couldn't shake the growing admiration he felt for Lisa. Her resilience, empathy, and unwavering optimism were qualities he hadn't encountered in anyone before, yet he couldn't ignore the nagging voice in the back of his mind reminding him of his deception. What would happen if she ever discovered the truth? Would she forgive him, or would she see him as just another selfish rich man playing games with her life? Despite his doubts, Robert knew one thing for certain. He wasn't ready to reveal his true identity yet. There was still so much he wanted to learn from Lisa, so much he wanted to understand about the world she lived in. And deep down, he hoped that by staying close to her, he might discover the missing piece he'd been searching for all along. Little did he know their journey was far from over. With each passing day, Robert found himself drawn deeper into Lisa's world, a world where kindness mattered more than wealth, and where humanity shone brightest in the darkest corners. Over the next few weeks, Robert as Joe became a regular part of Lisa's daily routine. Every morning, he would sit near the fountain in Central Park, waiting for her to arrive with whatever meager food she had managed to gather. Sometimes it was a piece of fruit. Other times it was a sandwich from a nearby soup kitchen. No matter what she brought, she always shared it willingly, never asking for anything in return. Their conversations grew longer and more personal as time went on. Lisa talked about her dreams, how she hoped to save enough money to rent a small apartment someday, even though she knew it was unlikely given her situation. She also spoke about the people she met on the streets, describing their struggles and triumphs with a level of detail that showed just how much she cared. Robert listened intently, marveling at her ability to find beauty in the bleakest of circumstances. In turn, Robert found himself opening up more than he ever expected. He told her bits and pieces of his fabricated backstory, how he had once worked as a mechanic before losing his job, how his marriage fell apart under the weight of financial stress. Each lie felt heavier than the last, but Lisa's non-judgmental demeanor made it easier to keep pretending. She nodded sympathetically, offering words of encouragement whenever he expressed doubt or frustration. "You know, Joe," she said one afternoon while they sat on a park bench, "everyone has their own battles to fight. What matters is that you're still here, still trying. That says a lot about you." Her words struck a chord with Robert. For years, he had prided himself on his success, believing that hard work and determination were all anyone needed to thrive. But Lisa's perspective challenged that belief. She didn't measure worth by achievements or possessions. Instead, she valued resilience, kindness, and the willingness to keep going no matter what. As their bond deepened, Lisa began teaching Robert survival skills, things she had learned during her 2 years on the streets. She showed him where to find free meals at local shelters, how to stay warm during cold nights, and which areas of the city were safest for sleeping. At first, Robert struggled to grasp these lessons, accustomed as he was to luxury and convenience. But slowly, he started adapting, realizing how resourceful and clever Lisa truly was. One day, while walking through the park, Lisa introduced Robert to a group of homeless individuals she often interacted with. There was Marcus, a former teacher, who had fallen on hard times after losing his job, Clara, a young woman battling addiction, and Sam, an elderly man who spent his days collecting cans to sell for cash. To Robert's surprise, they greeted him warmly, treating him like one of their own. "Joe's new around here," Lisa explained to the group. "He's been helping me out at the shelter lately." The others nodded approvingly, and soon they were sharing stories and laughter. For the first time in his life, Robert felt like he belonged somewhere, not because of his wealth or status, but simply because he was present and willing to listen. It was a humbling experience, one that forced him to confront the stark contrast between his old life and this new reality. Despite the growing connection, Robert couldn't ignore the guilt gnawing at him. Every kind word Lisa spoke, every act of generosity she extended only deepened his shame. He hated lying to her, especially when she trusted him so completely. Yet he also couldn't bring himself to reveal the truth. Something about her presence kept him coming back day after day, desperate to understand what made her tick. One chilly evening, as they huddled together under a bridge to escape the biting wind, Lisa shared a story that left Robert speechless. "When I first became homeless," she began, her voice soft but steady, "I thought my life was over. I felt invisible, like no one cared whether I lived or died. But then I met Clara, the same Clara you met today. She was barely surviving, addicted to drugs and living on the streets for years. One night she gave me half of her blanket because I was shivering so badly. That small act of kindness saved me, Joe. It reminded me that there's still good in the world even when everything seems hopeless." Robert stared at her, his chest tightening with emotion. Her words painted a vivid picture of a world he had never truly understood, a world where survival depended not on wealth or power, but on human connection and compassion. He realized that Lisa wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, finding purpose in helping others despite her own hardships. The next morning, Lisa invited Robert to join her on an errand. "There's a community garden downtown," she explained. "They let us pick fresh vegetables if we help with the planting and watering. Want to come?" Robert hesitated briefly, then nodded. Anything to spend more time with her and to learn more about her world. Together they took a bus to the garden, which turned out to be a vibrant patch of green nestled between towering buildings. Volunteers bustled about, tending to rows of lettuce, tomatoes, and herbs. Lisa quickly introduced Robert to the organizers, explaining that he was new to volunteering. For hours they worked side by side, planting seeds, pulling weeds, and carrying buckets of water. The physical labor was exhausting, but Robert found it oddly satisfying. He watched as Lisa moved gracefully among the plants, her hands steady and precise. When a young boy accidentally knocked over a tray of seedlings, she knelt beside him, calmly helping him clean up without a hint of frustration. "That's why everyone loves her," one of the volunteers whispered to Robert. "She's got a heart of gold." By the end of the day, their arms were full of fresh produce. Lisa handed Robert a bag of carrots and potatoes, insisting he take them. "You need it more than I do," she said firmly when he tried to protest. As they walked back to the park, Robert felt a wave of conflicting emotions. On one hand, he admired Lisa more than ever, her strength, her selflessness, her ability to inspire those around her. On the other hand, he felt increasingly unworthy of her trust. How could someone so genuine exist in a world that often rewarded selfishness and greed? And how could he continue deceiving her without feeling like a fraud? That night, as he lay in his penthouse staring at the ceiling, Robert replayed their conversations in his mind. He thought about the way Lisa smiled when she helped someone, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about making a difference. She wasn't doing any of this for recognition or reward. She did it because it was who she was. And then it hit him. Lisa wasn't the one being tested. He was. His experiment had started as a way to challenge her character, but somewhere along the way, it had become a mirror reflecting his own flaws and insecurities. He had entered this journey seeking answers about Lisa, but instead he was discovering truths about himself. The realization weighed heavily on him. For the first time, he questioned whether continuing the charade was worth it. Was he learning valuable lessons, or was he simply exploiting Lisa's kindness for his own curiosity? Could he ever make amends for the deception if she found out the truth? As dawn broke over the city, Robert made a decision. He wouldn't reveal his identity, not yet. but he vowed to approach their relationship differently. Instead of testing Lisa, he would focus on understanding her, supporting her, and perhaps even learning from her. Maybe, just maybe, he could use his privilege to make a real difference in her life, and in the lives of others like her. With that resolve, Robert prepared for another day disguised as Joe. But this time, his intentions were clearer. This time, he wasn't just playing a role, he was stepping into a world that demanded honesty, humility, and humanity. And for the first time in years, he felt ready to rise to the challenge. The days turned into weeks, and Robert as Joe continued to immerse himself in Lisa's world. Each day brought new lessons, new connections, and new challenges. He had started volunteering more often at the community garden, helping out at the shelter, and even assisting Lisa with small tasks like gathering supplies or finding dry spots to rest during rainy nights. The more he did, the more he realized how much effort it took to survive on the streets. It wasn't just about finding food or shelter. It was about navigating a system that often ignored or dismissed people like Lisa. Despite the hardships, Robert noticed something remarkable. Lisa never complained. Even when things went wrong, when the weather turned brutal, when someone stole her belongings, or when she went hungry for a day, she remained calm and optimistic. Her resilience was inspiring, but it also made Robert uneasy. How could someone endure so much without losing hope? Was it strength, faith, or simply a refusal to give up? One evening, as they sat together under the bridge where Lisa usually stayed, she handed him a cup of hot tea she had managed to get from a nearby cafe. "You've been doing great," she said with a smile. "I can tell you're getting used to this." Robert took the tea, his hands trembling slightly. "Thanks," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. He felt a pang of guilt every time she praised him, knowing full well that he didn't deserve it. But instead of dwelling on his deception, he decided to focus on the moment. "You make it look easy," he admitted. "How do you stay so strong?" Lisa shrugged, sipping her own tea. "It's not about being strong. It's about taking one step at a time. Some days are harder than others, but you learn to keep moving forward. And honestly, helping other people helps me too. It reminds me that I'm not alone." Her words stuck with Robert long after their conversation ended. That night, as he returned to his penthouse and stripped off his disguise, he couldn't stop thinking about what she had said. She found purpose in helping others even when she had almost nothing herself. Meanwhile, he had spent years chasing wealth and success, only to feel empty inside. The contrast was staggering. A few days later, everything changed. Robert and Lisa were walking back to the park after spending the afternoon at the community garden. They carried bags of fresh vegetables, laughing and chatting about their plans for the week. As they crossed a busy street, Lisa suddenly stumbled, clutching her chest. Her face went pale, and before Robert could react, she collapsed onto the sidewalk. Panic surged through him. For a moment he froze, unsure of what to do. Then instinct kicked in. Dropping the bags, he knelt beside her and gently shook her shoulder. "Lisa, are you okay?" She groaned softly, her eyes fluttering open. I don't know," she whispered, her voice weak. "I feel dizzy." Without hesitation, Robert flagged down a passing taxi. "We need to get her to a hospital," he told the driver, helping Lisa into the car. Once inside, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash, money he always kept hidden in case of emergencies. Handing it to the driver, he said, "Take us to the nearest hospital, please hurry." The ride felt endless. Lisa leaned against him, her breathing shallow. Robert held her hand, trying to reassure her. "You're going to be fine," he murmured, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. For the first time since starting this experiment, he felt truly terrified, not for himself but for her. When they arrived at the hospital, doctors quickly rushed Lisa inside. Robert paced nervously in the waiting room, replaying the events in his mind. What if something serious happened to her? What if she didn't pull through? The thought was unbearable. Finally, a doctor emerged and called his name. "Are you with Lisa Monroe?" he asked. Yes, Robert replied anxiously. Is she okay? The doctor nodded. She's stable now. It looks like severe exhaustion and malnutrition. She needs rest and proper care, but she should recover fully with time. Relief washed over Robert, followed by a wave of guilt. How had he missed the signs? She had been pushing herself too hard, giving so much of herself to others that she neglected her own health. And he, disguised as Joe, had been too focused on his own agenda to notice. The next morning, Robert visited Lisa in her hospital room. She looked frail lying in the bed, hooked up to an IV drip, but her eyes still held the same warmth and kindness. When she saw him, she smiled weakly. "Hey, Joe," she said. "You stayed." "Of course I stayed," Robert replied, pulling up a chair beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she said softly. "They said I need to take it easy for a while. Guess I've been running myself ragged, huh?" Robert nodded, his throat tightening. "You've been taking care of everyone else. Maybe it's time someone took care of you." Lisa chuckled faintly. "That's sweet, but I'll be fine. Don't worry about me." For a moment, Robert considered telling her the truth. He wanted to confess who he really was, to explain why he had pretended to be someone else. But looking at her fragile state, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he resolved to help her in another way. After leaving the hospital, Robert called Karen and instructed her to arrange for Lisa to stay in transitional housing. Using his resources anonymously, he ensured she would have a safe place to recover once she was discharged. It wasn't enough to make up for his deception, but it was a start. When Lisa was finally released from the hospital, Robert as Joe met her outside. "I have some good news," he said, smiling. "There's a place where you can stay for a while. It's clean, safe, and close to the park." Lisa's eyes widened in surprise. "What? How did you manage that?" "A friend helped me," Robert lied smoothly. "Don't worry about the details. Just focus on getting better." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes as she hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Joe. I don't know what I'd do without you." Robert hugged her back, guilt pressing heavily on his chest. "You'd do the same for me," he said quietly. And deep down, he knew it was true. Over the next few days, Lisa settled into her new living arrangement. Robert visited her regularly, bringing groceries and checking in on her progress. She seemed happier and healthier, though she still insisted on helping others whenever she could. "This is just temporary," she told him one day. "Once I'm back on my feet, I'll go back to volunteering at the shelter." Robert nodded, though part of him wished she wouldn't push herself so hard. Still, he admired her determination. She wasn't content to simply accept help. She wanted to give back no matter her circumstances. But as the days passed, Robert grew increasingly conflicted. His guilt over deceiving Lisa became unbearable. Every smile she gave him, every word of gratitude, felt like a weight he couldn't carry anymore. He knew he couldn't keep pretending forever, but revealing the truth would risk losing her trust completely. One evening, as he prepared to leave her apartment, he hesitated at the door. "Lisa," he began, his voice trembling. "There's something I need to tell you." She looked at him curiously. "What is it?" Robert swallowed hard, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to her. "Read this when you're ready," he said. "And then, we'll talk." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Lisa staring at the note in confusion. His heart pounded as he stepped into the elevator, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, or the bravest decision he'd ever taken. Inside the note, he had written everything: his real name, his wealth, his reasons for pretending to be Joe. He confessed his admiration for her, his guilt over deceiving her, and his desire to make amends. Now, all he could do was wait, and hope that Lisa would forgive him. As he returned to his penthouse, Robert stared out the window at the city below. For the first time, he didn't see it as a place of power and privilege. Instead, he saw it through Lisa's eyes, a place filled with struggles, resilience, and untapped potential. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain: his life would never be the same again. Lisa sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the folded piece of paper Robert had handed her. Her fingers traced its edges, hesitating to open it. She had spent the last few weeks recovering in transitional housing, slowly regaining her strength, and adjusting to a life that felt unfamiliar yet comforting. For the first time in years, she didn't have to worry about where her next meal would come from, or whether she'd find a safe place to sleep. It was strange how quickly things had changed and how much of it seemed tied to Joe. Joe, the man who had appeared out of nowhere, pretending to be homeless, yet somehow managing to make her feel less alone. He had listened to her stories, shared her struggles, and helped her in ways no one else ever had. And now this note. What could it possibly say? Taking a deep breath, Lisa unfolded the paper and began to read. Dear Lisa, I owe you an apology. A big one. Everything I've told you about myself has been a lie. My name isn't Joe. It's Robert Carter. I'm not homeless. I'm one of the richest men in New York City. When I first met you, I wasn't looking for friendship or connection. I was testing you, or rather testing my assumptions about people like you. I wanted to know if your kindness was genuine, or if there was some hidden motive behind it. So I disguised myself as a beggar and inserted myself into your world. But something unexpected happened along the way. As I got to know you, I realized how wrong I was. Not just about you, but about everything. Your generosity, your resilience, your ability to care for others despite having so little. It humbled me. You taught me lessons I never thought I needed to learn. I arranged for your housing because I wanted to help, but also because I felt guilty. Guilty for lying to you. Guilty for exploiting your trust, and guilty for being blind to the reality of your life. I don't expect you to forgive me. In fact, I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to see me again. But I hope you'll let me explain myself in person. If you're willing, meet me tomorrow at the fountain in Central Park at noon. If not, I'll understand. Sincerely, Robert. Lisa lowered the note, her mind racing. She read it again, then a third time, trying to process what she had just learned. Joe, no, Robert, wasn't who he said he was. He was rich, powerful, and had been playing a role all along. Betrayal burned in her chest, followed by confusion, anger, and finally, curiosity. She couldn't deny the hurt she felt. All those conversations, all those moments they had shared, they had been built on lies. Yet as she thought about it, she realized something else. His actions, even if motivated by deception, had still made a difference in her life. The housing, the food, the support. He hadn't just walked away after discovering what he wanted to know. Instead, he had stayed, helping her when she needed it most. Was his apology sincere? Did he truly regret what he had done? Or was this just another act, another layer of manipulation? Lisa didn't know. But one thing was certain. She needed answers. The next day, Lisa arrived at the fountain early. She sat on a bench, clutching the note in her hand, unsure of what to expect. Would Robert show up? And if he did, what would she say to him? At exactly noon, a familiar figure approached. It was Robert, dressed in a crisp suit and tie, looking nothing like the scruffy Joe she had come to know. His usual confidence seemed replaced by nervousness as he hesitated a few steps away from her. Lisa, he said softly, his voice trembling. I wasn't sure if you'd come. I wasn't sure either, she replied, standing up to face him. Her tone was calm, but her eyes betrayed her emotions: anger, hurt, and a flicker of curiosity. Robert took a step closer, his hands clasped tightly together. I want to start by saying how sorry I am. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing something clever, something that would prove a point. But instead I ended up learning more about myself than I ever intended. Lisa crossed her arms, studying him carefully. So, what was the point? What were you trying to prove? Robert sighed, running a hand through his hair. I guess I wanted to test whether kindness like yours could exist without ulterior motives. I've always believed that people act out of self-interest, that everyone has an angle. But you shattered that belief. You give freely, without expecting anything in return. And honestly, it scared me. Scared you? Lisa asked, raising an eyebrow. Robert nodded. Yes, because it made me question everything I thought I knew about success, wealth, and purpose. You live with almost nothing, yet you're happier and more fulfilled than I've ever been. How is that possible? Lisa didn't respond right away. She turned her gaze toward the fountain, watching the water ripple in the sunlight. After a moment, she spoke. It's not about what you have or don't have, Robert. It's about how you treat others and how you choose to see the world. Life isn't fair, but that doesn't mean we have to stop caring. Helping someone else, it reminds me that I'm human. That's all. Her words hung in the air between them, simple, yet profound. Robert felt a lump form in his throat. You're incredible, Lisa. Truly. And I don't deserve your forgiveness. No, you don't, Lisa agreed bluntly. But I'm here because I want to understand why you did it. Why go to such lengths to deceive someone like me? Robert hesitated, searching for the right words. I think I was lost. I had everything money could buy, but I felt empty inside. Meeting you forced me to confront that emptiness. Watching you help others, seeing the impact you have on people's lives, it made me realize how disconnected I've been from the real world. I wanted to understand your perspective, even if my methods were wrong. Lisa studied him silently, weighing his words. Finally, she said, Okay, let's say I believe you. What happens now? Robert looked surprised. What do you mean? I mean, Lisa continued, are you just going to walk away and forget about all this? Or are you actually willing to do something meaningful with what you've learned? The question caught Robert off guard. He hadn't expected her to propose a solution or a challenge. I don't know, he admitted. I've been thinking about setting up programs to help people like you. Housing, job training, access to health care. But I didn't know where to start. Lisa smiled faintly. Start by listening. Not pretending to listen, but really hearing what people need. You've already seen a glimpse of my world. Use that knowledge to make a difference. For the first time in weeks, Robert felt a spark of hope. Would you work with me on this? Help guide me? I can't do it alone. Lisa tilted her head, considering his offer. Only if you promise to be honest from now on. No more lies, no more games, just real action. I promise, Robert said earnestly. Whatever it takes. Over the following days, Robert and Lisa began working together. They started small, brainstorming ideas for initiatives that could address the root causes of homelessness, rather than just providing temporary fixes. Lisa shared her experiences, explaining the challenges she faced, and offering insights into what resources would truly make a difference. Robert used his connections and wealth to turn their ideas into reality. They launched a pilot program focused on affordable housing, partnering with local organizations to provide stable living conditions for individuals transitioning out of homelessness. They also set up workshops to teach skills like budgeting, resume writing, and interview preparation. Lisa played an active role, serving as both an advisor and a spokesperson. Her authenticity resonated with participants, inspiring them to believe in themselves and their ability to change their circumstances. As the program gained traction, Robert found himself changing too. He spent less time in boardrooms and more time on the streets, talking to people and understanding their needs firsthand. The guilt he had carried for so long began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. One evening, as they stood outside the newly opened housing facility, Lisa turned to Robert with a smile. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you lied to me. Robert laughed nervously. Really? Yeah, Lisa said. Because if you hadn't, none of this would have happened. Sometimes mistakes lead to something good. Robert nodded, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. And as he looked at Lisa, he realized that her kindness hadn't just changed his perspective. It had changed his life. Months passed, and the partnership between Robert and Lisa grew stronger with each passing day. What had started as an apology and a tentative collaboration blossomed into something far greater, a shared mission to create lasting change in the lives of those who needed it most. Together, they built a foundation called New Beginnings, dedicated to addressing homelessness through sustainable solutions. It wasn't just about providing temporary relief. It was about empowering people to rebuild their lives. The foundation quickly gained attention. News outlets covered its innovative approach, highlighting how Lisa's first-hand experiences shaped every decision. She became the face of the organization, speaking at events and sharing her story with audiences across the city. Her honesty and passion inspired countless individuals, while Robert worked tirelessly behind the scenes, using his wealth and influence to secure funding and resources. Despite their success, both Lisa and Robert knew that running the foundation wouldn't always be easy. There were challenges, bureaucratic hurdles, skeptics who doubted their intentions, and moments when progress felt painfully slow. But they faced these obstacles together, drawing strength from each other's resilience. Over time, their relationship evolved from one of uncertainty and mistrust to a deep bond rooted in mutual respect and admiration. One crisp autumn morning, Lisa stood outside the newly renovated community center that served as the foundation's headquarters. The building buzzed with activity. Volunteers handed out meals, counselors offered job training sessions, and children played in a small outdoor playground. Families moved in and out, carrying boxes of donated clothes or signing up for housing assistance programs. It was a scene full of hope and energy, a stark contrast to the bleakness Lisa had once known. Robert walked up beside her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Here," he said, handing her one. "You look like you could use this." Lisa accepted the cup with a grateful smile. "Thanks. I didn't realize how much work goes into keeping all this running smoothly." "It's worth it," Robert replied, gazing at the bustling crowd. "Every person we help is another life changed. That's what makes it meaningful." Lisa nodded, sipping her coffee thoughtfully. "Do you ever think about where we started? You pretending to be someone else, me wondering if I could trust you, and now look at us." Robert finished, chuckling softly. Who would have thought? They stood in silence for a moment, watching as volunteers greeted newcomers and guided them to different services. A young mother approached Lisa, holding her toddler's hand. "Excuse me," she said shyly. "I wanted to thank you. Your program helped me find a job, and now I can finally afford daycare for my son." Lisa's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful. We're so proud of you." The woman smiled tearfully before walking away, leaving Lisa and Robert to exchange a glance. "Moments like that remind me why we're doing this," Lisa said quietly. "Me too," Robert agreed. "It's not about recognition or headlines. It's about making a difference, one person at a time." As winter approached, New Beginnings launched its biggest initiative yet, a citywide campaign to provide affordable housing for families struggling with eviction. The project required significant investment, but Robert didn't hesitate to fund it. He sold one of his luxury properties and redirected the proceeds toward constructing safe, modern apartments specifically designed for low-income residents. Lisa heard about his decision. She confronted him gently. "Are you sure about this? That property must have been worth millions." "I don't need it," Robert said simply. "Not when there are people out there who do. Besides, money isn't worth much if it doesn't make the world a better place." Lisa studied him for a moment, then smiled. "You've come a long way, Robert Carter." "So have you," he countered. "You've taught me more than I ever imagined." Their conversation was interrupted by Karen, Robert's assistant, who approached them with a clipboard. "We're ready for the ribbon-cutting ceremony," she announced. "Everyone's waiting for you both." Lisa and Robert exchanged a look before heading toward the crowd gathered near the entrance of the new housing complex. Dozens of people cheered as they stepped onto a small stage, including residents, volunteers, and local officials. As Lisa held the oversized scissors to cut the ribbon, she turned to address the audience. "This is more than just a building," she began, her voice steady and heartfelt. "It's a symbol of hope, of second chances, and of the power of community. None of this would have been possible without the support of everyone here, and especially Robert, who believed in our vision and made it a reality." The crowd erupted in applause, and Lisa handed the scissors to Robert, inviting him to join her in cutting the ribbon. Together they completed the task, signaling the official opening of the housing complex. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment, but neither Lisa nor Robert cared about the photos. For them, the real reward was seeing the joy on the faces of the families who would soon call this place home. In the months that followed, New Beginnings continued to expand its reach. They opened additional centers throughout the city, partnered with schools to offer educational programs, and even launched a mentorship initiative connecting formerly homeless individuals with professionals in various fields. Lisa remained at the heart of it all, ensuring that every decision reflected the needs of those they aimed to serve. Meanwhile, Robert embraced his role as a philanthropist, leveraging his connections to amplify the foundation's impact. Though their lives had changed dramatically, certain things stayed the same. Lisa still visited Central Park occasionally, sitting by the fountain where she and Robert had first met. Sometimes Robert joined her, and they reminisced about how far they'd come. Their conversations were lighter now, filled with laughter, and shared memories rather than tension and doubt. One evening, as they sat side by side watching the sunset, Lisa broke the comfortable silence. "Do you remember that night under the bridge, when I collapsed and you took me to the hospital?" Robert nodded. "How could I forget? I was terrified." "I was too," Lisa admitted. "But looking back, I think that was the turning point. For both of us. You stopped pretending and I stopped being afraid to ask for help." "You saved me too, you know," Robert said softly. "Before I met you, I had everything but purpose. Now I feel like I'm finally doing something that matters." Lisa smiled, resting her head briefly on his shoulder. "We saved each other." Years later, when asked about the success of New Beginnings, Lisa often credited Robert's willingness to listen and learn, and Robert, in turn, praised Lisa's unwavering compassion and determination. Together they proved that true change comes not from wealth or privilege alone, but from the courage to connect, to grow, and to give back. Their journey hadn't been perfect. There had been mistakes, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But through it all, they had discovered something invaluable: the power of humanity. In helping others, they had found meaning in their own lives, forging a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the park, Lisa and Robert sat quietly, content in the knowledge that they had made a difference not just in the world but in each other.